Hello and a very warm welcome to this December webinar from World Vision United. My name is Martin Campbell. I'm the Senior Director for Global Digital Platforms, and in today's update we're going to take a look at what's been delivered onto the platform over the last quarter, take a look at the latest optimization tests that we've been running that are all in the process of being tested out and will go live in their final form once we know what those results fully are. And of course we're also going to be in a position to take a little sneak peek at what's coming our way in 2022. Before we do that, it's important just to touch base on performance, which continues to deliver further growth. The platform is now delivering 41% better performance in conversion rate for those countries that are using it than a year ago. So really strong growth there, and a real testament to the work of the optimization group, which of course combines marketing professionals from participating offices with the United team. A really great way to finish up the year. So let's get started and dive into those updates. I'll hand over to Helmut, who will bring us up to date on what's been happening on the platform.
Thanks, Martin, and hi, everyone. I'd like to give you a quick overview of Q1 delivery status, as well as of the recent testing that we have done in the past couple of weeks. So we already talked about both of those things in our November webinar, which was only 3 weeks ago. So I'm just going to give you a quick iterative overview of what happened the past 3 weeks. So just to remind you guys again, we're currently working in 3 different areas on the platform. The first one is development, which delivers global features to all of the offices in order to increase your fundraising performance. The second one is integrations, which is mainly at the moment payment providers and CRM systems, which enable more of you to start onboarding and to launch. And the third one is go lives and infrastructure, which we call operations, and that actually helps us to deploy our platform in more countries and to scale it up and to be cost effective with our infrastructure and to increase security around this platform. And so in terms of sprint progress, we now have the first 5 sprints of this quarter under our belt, and there's 1 more sprint to come. So at this point, we would expect to have most of the things released, and still to work on a couple of things that we will release in the last release of this quarter, which will happen on January 5 in 3 weeks time, because nobody will be around, and on December 28 to release. So basically, most of the quarters has happened now, but a couple of things we can still work on and we can still release in our Sprint 63. Right. So if we look at what we're delivering, there were 4 different packages that all of you prioritized together with us about 3 months ago. And on 3 of them, I have already given an update in the November webinar. Conversion rate optimization is something that we will continuously do. So we actually ran all the tests that we planned at the beginning of this quarter, but we will continue to run tests. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the second part of this. In terms of dynamic child sponsorship sign-up, we have already delivered a couple of new features here. The 2 things that we are working on now in Sprint 63 are first the filter only flow, where you can as a supporter select a specific child by country or by age, and you don't see any other information about the child. So that's the first bit, and the second bit is related to bounce backs. So we have already released the MVP for bounce backs, but we know that a lot of you wanted to give supporters the ability to write a message or upload an image when they wrote or gave a bounce back to their sponsored child. So, and that's something that we will deliver on top of the MVP by the end of next sprint. And then the one thing that has been delivered since we last spoke on the November webinar is the gift shop MVP. So that's something that I just want to show you real quick. All of those screenshots are not mock-ups or anything, but they're real screenshots taken from our website. Here you can see with the content.wvunited.org, that's our global content repository, which you can grab content from at any time and just get in touch with us if you want to do that. So you can see that here you can now create a gift catalog. You can show different gifts at different price points, and supporters can actually buy some of those gifts and check out with them. So if you feel like you don't have the capacity to build out the gift shop, or it's too complex, or you don't know how to do it, feel free to reach out to us at any time. We have this global version of the gift shop already running, so we can give you a head start, but just deploying that to your countryside as well, and by automatically translating it, so you only have to clean up the translations in your local language if you need to. So that's the update on Gift Shop MVP. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat as well. Happy to answer them later in this webinar. If we look at integrations, actually, already in the November webinar, we had delivered most. So we're focusing on Simma API now, and that is still on track. So we're planning to deliver that by the end of next sprint. And it looks like that's actually going to happen. In terms of operations, it's kind of the same thing. South Africa has gone live, and all the other things are ongoing things that we're on track with. So in terms of cost-effective infrastructure, that's a big migration project that will save us lots of money in licensing costs. And we've now completed the first part of this, but there are 3 parts in total. So that's something that will definitely continue in Q2 because it's a big piece of work that we're doing. And that's just a quick snapshot of what has happened in the past 3 weeks, past 1.5 sprints, and where we're on track to deliver what we promised by the end of this quarter. So let's talk a little bit about testing. And I'm always amazed at how quickly the team now comes up with new hypotheses, deploys new tests, and gathers insights on really an increasing speed and in an increasing quality of what we do. So that's really, really great to see. And just to mention that this team now actually includes people from 3 of our 4 live offices as well. So we actually have people from Spain, from Ireland, and from the UK on this optimization group, coming up with hypotheses and talking through them and prioritizing them together. So that's a really good thing to see, how we get more data-driven decision-making into the organization through this testing program. So really great job from that optimization team. So let's have a look at which tests have been concluded in the past 3 weeks. And the first one, I think Nina already talked a little bit about that in the November webinar, was about the child configuration page. So what we originally hypothesized was that if we move the call to action button above the fold, especially on desktop, so you can see here on the left-hand side in the baseline, we have a bunch of content, but we don't have a clear call to action because that's somewhere below the fold. And our hypothesis was, if we make that leaner and clearer, and we move the call to action button more to the left-hand side and more to the top, then click-through rate and transactions will actually increase. What we saw though, so this test has run for quite a while, what we saw though is that we didn't reach statistical significance on this, right? While we saw a trend in one direction or the other direction at certain points in time, we never actually got to clear enough tests to reduce the uncertainty around this enough in order to say, yes, the variant actually performs better. In terms of decision making based on data, though, that's an interesting case as well, because not only did we think that the variant would perform better, but also the variant is closer aligned to what the rest of the website looks and actually reduces complexity of the whole site setup. So originally, when we built this baseline here on the left-hand side, it was kind of a standalone page, and it follows a different structure, has different elements than anywhere else on the site. So even though we concluded that the variant didn't perform significantly better than the baseline, we still took the decision to remove the baseline and deploy the variant, because that will enable us to run other tests and test more hypotheses more quickly going forward and reduce the complexity of the whole setup. So we can now reuse elements we have on that page, or if we change elements elsewhere, we can also change them on this page more easily. And because we had run this A/B test, we knew that it was a relatively low risk decision to change that and to reduce the complexity. So I think that's a good example of how A/B tests, even if you don't even see a decrease or an increase, can help you make decisions with more confidence. And actually, we closed up that test, I think, 2 days ago, and yesterday we already launched the next test on this. So we now have we're now testing the child bio in this space here on the variant. So to check if we have a child bio here, does that help us in increasing click-through rate and conversions? So that also means that the end of a test doesn't mean we'll leave that page alone, but it means that we will make space for new hypotheses and for new tests. So that's the first test that I wanted to talk to you about. The second one is the new checkout design, which I think we also mentioned in the November webinar. And here we actually saw a statistically significant increase in conversions based on the changes that we did. So conversions actually increased by 17% throughout the time that we did this test. And this means we now removed the baseline checkout, and we implemented the new variant of the checkout, which has a different progress bar up here, which has this gray area around interaction fields, which creates more focus. And if you scroll down a little bit, you will see product information and trust items as well. And I think one more thing to mention here is that this test actually ran across all countries that were live on the platform at that time, which we're trying to do for all tests. We're not quite there yet, so some tests, and I'll show you one example later, only run on 1 or 2 countries right now, but we're trying to get to a high percentage of tests actually running across the platform, because that will give us more confidence and will give us statistically significant results at a larger speed as well. So that's the new checkout design test. The next one is a test around flow without anchors, and here that's really hard to show in screenshots. I'll need to explain a little bit how this works. So on child-sponsored landing pages, supporters can see specific children in what we call the registered children widget, and the main call to action is for them to select a child, right? But if they scroll down more and engage with the content, there are actually other call to actions that say sponsor child. So you can see that one here. And so the question is, what happens if you click or tap that call to action? And in the baseline, what happens is you're anchored back up to the registered children widget, where you see the specific children again, because that's what we want you to do as a supporter, right? And what we saw in Hotjar was that some users actually scrolled down, engaged with content, then clicked that call to action, were anchored up, and continued to scroll down, click the button again, and we're kind of stuck in a loop, right? So it was kind of more like a qualitative or anecdotal evidence that we had that we might be able to improve this. No quantitative data showing this. So what we hypothesized was that if we have a more linear flow, that this would increase or decrease complexity and decrease confusion for supporters, and would actually increase click-through rate to the next step, which would be to view a specific child on the child product child-sponsored product config page. And so what we built was, if you here on the right-hand side, if you click that same button or tap that same button, you actually get to a second page with a different page load, which basically only shows you a registered children widget. So you still see children, but it's more like, oh, now you're on the next page, you click through, you select a child, and then you go to the next step. And you can also browse back with your browser buttons to get back to that place where you originally clicked the call to action. What we found out, though, was that click-through rate actually decreased by 22% for this additional variant. So apparently the extra step that we introduced caused more complexity and caused more people to drop off in between than the anchor flow. So this actually was statistically significant as well. So as a result, we abandoned this variant again and kept the baseline. But of course, we're trying to look for ways to reduce that confusion around anchoring. So again, this is only the beginning of trying to find out how can we improve this. But apparently that was not a way to do it. If we look at the next one, then that's also something that we only concluded yesterday, is an always sticky navigation. So here the hypothesis was that if on the home page mainly, we always show the navigation, we actually give people an additional way to navigate away from the home and into their favorite part of the website. So you can see here on the left-hand side on Spain's home, you cannot see the navigation. Only if you start to scroll up again will it show. And here on the right-hand side, you can always see the navigation. Now, hypothesis was that this will decrease bounce rate on the page where we show this navigation. And turns out it really doesn't make a difference. So we actually checked some secondary metrics as well, like conversion rates or page views, and none of those actually reached statistical significance. So apparently it doesn't really help if you always show the navigation, which means we're going back to the original baseline here as well. And then the last test, which was a really interesting one as well, I think, and a really good case study, was one that because it was very content heavy, we only did this with Spain for now. And what we did was we created an alternative blog overview page. So on the left-hand side, you can see a teaser with all stories, whereas on the right-hand side, you can see a teaser with only education stories. And then if you scroll down, you can see only water stories and so on. So we created a bunch of categories and said, okay, let's break down what kind of stories we show, and not just show all stories, but show stories based on categories as well. And what we actually saw here was that click-through rate dramatically decreased based on this. So we had almost 80% drop in click-through rate based on that. We can also see that people interact with this teaser widget here quite a lot. So they actually look at 3, 4, 5 stories and then pick the one that they like best. Whereas if they move more, not horizontally, but vertically here, they always only look at the first story. And if that doesn't help them, they drop off or go to a different page on the website. And that's actually a very good example of why A/B tests actually help us make sense and reduce the noise that we normally have in performance. Because I actually looked at Google Analytics, because that was kind of a random test where we thought, is it really important to A/B test that? I mean, categories on the news site actually sound like a good idea. Why can't we just do that? And so after the test had been concluded, I had a look at Google Analytics and I thought, what would have happened? So what would the data tell us if we hadn't done an A/B test? And I just gave you a quick screenshot here, and I'll need to move my video for that. So you can see that we deployed this test on September 20. And this is the traffic on blog pages. What that shows. This is the traffic on blog pages since so from September to the end of November, right? And so let's say if we had only looked at what has the traffic that we got from the category page been before we made the change and after we made the change. So let's say we didn't do a test, we just made the change. We would have seen a 102% increase in page views, right? Let's say roughly, depending on if you look at unique page views, right? Roughly double traffic on blogs from the category page. So we would have said, oh, that was a really good idea, because the 3 weeks after we made the change, the traffic really went up. The 3 weeks before, we didn't have lots of traffic, so therefore the change was a good thing, right? What you can see though was that in October there was a spike anyway, and in November the traffic went down again, and it hasn't really gone up since, but there's really lots of noise here, right? So you can see the spikes actually double from one day to the other. So there's really not a good way for us to see, without having that control group, what's the effect that a change that we actually had, and what's the change that some outside circumstances made in that direction. So I think that's a really good example where by only comparing before we made the change and after we made the change, we would have thought that's a very good idea. But by actually A/B testing this with the randomized control group, we saw that this was actually not a very good idea to do this. So I think that's a really good case study as well, and a really good example of why we need to run those A/B tests and why it's so crucial that team runs the way they are and concludes so many A/B tests and continues to gather so much insight for us and for all of you who are on the platform already, but also for all of you who will join the platform, because all of that confidence and decision making will be baked in by the time you join. So that's a quick overview on testing, and with that I'll give it back to Martin.
Thanks, Helmut. Really good to see how much we've achieved this quarter, all of those pieces of user-facing, supporter-facing change that we've talked about, and of course behind the scenes to have delivered Simmer and Navision integration so that we're ready to plug in Simmer and Navision countries and roll out United into those new geographies is a really exciting place to be. And also really important to note there that we've completed all of the work on this quarter's roadmap as planned, despite obviously the ongoing challenges that we're all facing of continuing to work remotely, work from home, and deal with some tricky COVID situations in different parts of the world, as well as some other sort of natural and environmental impact that we've encountered, particularly with our team over in Chennai. So great news on the roadmap side of things. Also in terms of our sort of going live, which is one of our really important sort of watchwords around the United platform. We're now, of course, live in 4 countries. We went live in South Africa this quarter, which, although World Vision South Africa is a relatively small office, obviously a growing office in line with that country's economy, it's absolutely fantastic for us and a real symbolic move to move World Vision United, which has previously been a European project, out of Europe into Africa, where so much of our work happens, and start to see some growth there as well. So a really exciting time. Of course, on the dashboard you can also see we've got another 3 countries now in the content stage, which means that they are ready to go live. All the development work that's needed for their agreed go live criteria has now been completed, and we're ready to go live as soon as the next quarter, and obviously other support offices coming in behind that as well. It's actually quite difficult to keep track of just how much has been delivered. Obviously in these updates we kind of give you the edited highlights, the documentation on the community hub which is linked below, also covers a more broader set of information around the new features that have gone live. But they do sort of, that's still a summary, because each sprint we're adding about 25, 30, sometimes as many. This sprint was a busy one. It's more like 40 new stories to the site, and those can be anything from a bug fix to a quite a major change in a supporter-facing piece of functionality, or it can be a behind-the-scenes change that improves efficiency or speed or reduces cost. So everything, obviously, with being a user story, has a business benefit. So that means over the quarter, we've delivered over 150 stories onto the platform every 2 weeks with that relentless cycle. And that's just the speed that the team is running at. So we're continuing to do that. And as you've seen already from Helmut, many of those stories have boosted performance of the platform. It's really good to see. Behind the scenes, of course, in the World Vision United team, we've had some changes. We've had some new joiners, quite a few new joiners this year. So welcome to everyone who's joined us in that side of things. We've said a fond farewell to a few team members as well who have gone on to other pastures for all sorts of different reasons, but we wish them well. And I should just let you know a little bit about what's been going on behind the scenes to maybe do some of the less interesting parts of the platform, the bits we don't tend to talk about very much because it's not very exciting. It's that kind of preventative maintenance or the management of technical debt, not just bug fixes, which we can see, but also just preventing future problems and meaning that we can carry on working at this pace. If we leave things in a little bit of a mess, as I continually tell my children, it makes life difficult for us later on. And so if we spend the time to tidy up as we go, then we end up with a platform which continues to deliver quickly over a period of time. And the team have been absolutely fantastic at that over the course of this whole year, and this last quarter in particular, as we really start to see scale here, working with, I think we're actually working on about 10 countries now in terms of those that are live and those that are coming through the pipeline. Different geographies, different languages, different CRM integrations, different payment providers. All of that is a lot to keep tidy, and the team have done an absolutely fantastic job of that to enable us to carry on adding to that global footprint. So we're tremendously proud of the team as a leadership team, and we thank them on your behalf. A heartfelt thanks out to the team. You've done an absolutely amazing job this year in getting us to where we are today, and particularly in finishing off this year by delivering absolutely everything we said we would this quarter. And when we return in 2022, we will have a lot to be excited about then as well. Participating offices have already met to agree the development priorities for the coming quarter, which are focused on delivering the minimum viable product of the sponsorship portal and on optimizing the landing pages and product pages of the platform, an area where we've already seen a big boost in performance this quarter, but where we still think there's plenty more performance to be had and ways to understand our supporters better so that we can engage with them better online. So those will be the focus for the next quarter in terms of what you'll see delivered. But of course, behind the scenes, we're also working with colleagues elsewhere in global technology and digital, GTD, to complete the integration of United with other elements of the global MarTech stack. So that means the global CRM, RCDS, the Registered Child Database System, and the global mobile app. Now we've already completed a proof of concept with World Vision United and Dynamics 365. So as the global CRM comes into shape, we'll be plugging that all in together and making sure that those offices moving to the global CRM will see a really smooth integration with real-time data transfer and a really rich experience for supporters that's all supported natively within the CRM. The thing we're most excited about, of course, is the most visible thing is delivering the platform to even more locations around the world and delivering the improvements in conversion rate that we can already do with the platform to more and more locations to really help us to connect better with our supporters around the world. So lots to look forward to next year. I will look forward to working with you again. And in the meantime, it's my pleasure on behalf of the whole team at United to wish you and your family a very, very happy and joyful Christmas season. And we look forward to seeing you again in January. Until then.